okay, let's look for solutions together. So the Ministry of Health offered some funds to the ilhqot'in national government to help find a project manager and figure out a solution for, what would you like to see? And along the same amount of time that the chiefs were advocating on the world stage in 2023, a feasibility study was done in all 6 of the ilhqot'in communities, and the study was about what would a treatment center look like here? What would you guys like to see in a treatment center? And so that's what led to this model of care. And so I was hired last year in November, and it was kind of exciting because it was like, here's a ranch called Deer Creek Ranch near Unicity. We want you to figure out something to do with addiction recovery. So no programming plans, it was just like grassroots, like clear slate, just figure it out. So I took that feasibility study and heard the voices and what they were asking for. And there was 2 key things that I saw in that feasibility study. And the first was they wanted to heal on their own lands. And the second was that they wanted bridged housing. So they didn't want to see people coming out of treatment and then just, ending up in relapse or detoxing and having nowhere to go while they're waiting for treatment. So those were 2 huge gaps that we saw. And so I want to play a little quick 5-minute video clip just so you can have a vision of what this model of care is going to look like, the territory that it's going to be on, and then we'll talk about how this affects you and your communities. So where is our tech guy? There he is. Thank you, Nick and Travis, for coming and supporting with tech.
She offered to pick me up and bring me, and we had a really good conversation. And through that conversation we had, it was a couple of hours until we got to where we were going, and she just, she saw in me this potential that I had never seen in myself. And I spoke to her about some of the ideas that I've had in my life that I wanted to see through, and she just was constantly on me after that. Len, let's go here. Len, let's do this. Len, I'm starting Wellbriety here. Take this training. Let's go. And she's just a head first kind of person, and I've always admired those type of people. For me, I'm a let me just dip my toes in the water first and see how cold it is. So the whole time I'm like, Judy, I'm like, hold on, please, let's just think about this. Let's make a plan. She, no, Len, let's go. Let's go. I think I'll just go from the heart here today. So she asked me to give a speech today, and I spent a week working on my speech, and I made sure my computer was on. It was on over there a minute ago, and sure enough, I unplug it and I come up here, and now my laptop doesn't work. So I'm going to go back to doing what I do, and I've been speaking for 25 years, and I can say that I'm refreshingly nervous today to come and give this speech. And I love the challenge because I've been speaking for 25 years, and I've been really comfortable and used of being up here and speaking. And then she told me about what I would be speaking about and sharing my story, and I, in front of all these people and the dignitaries from the different nations and the communities, the representatives from FNHA and representatives of chief and council, and I just got nervous. I was like, whoa, I'm going to be speaking in front of all these amazing people, and who am I? I'm just Len. That's the way I see myself in this world. I don't see what I do as anything great or special, but every now and then, like I said, somebody comes along and they see in you what you can't see. And Judy dragged me kicking and screaming along, said, Len, we're going to do this and that, and here we go, and I'm very grateful. But I had a 5-minute welcoming speech I was going to do, and the beautiful cultural team from WFN took care of that. Oh, great. WFN took care of that, so there goes 10 minutes of my speech. They took care of everything. And then Judy came up and she explained about the Red Road Recovery Center And so there goes another 10 minutes of my speech there. So thank you, WLFN community, our cultural team, and Judy for taking care of that. So amazing. I am so technically inept, it's frustrating. So I'll go into my speech here, and I call this Reflections of a Peaceful Warrior, and I've come up with the name Peaceful Warrior because early on in my life, I had a skewed perception of what a warrior was, coming from trauma, sexual abuse, and physical abuse. When I was young, I thought warrior meant was anybody that was going to stand up and willing to fight, take anybody on at any time, without thinking. And that got me into a lot of trouble in my life. And as I got older and wiser, I started to understand that a true warrior fights for peace. And a true warrior is a person that creates peace, not only for themselves, but for the people around them. So I kind of dubbed myself a peaceful warrior. So I call this Reflections of a Peaceful Warrior. Hello and good day. I am honored to be here. My name is Leonard Supernault, and I welcome everyone in attendance to the traditional territory of the Secwepemc people. Secwepemc literally means people spread out over the land. The Secwepemc territory runs along the BC-Alberta border, up north to the Bowen Lakes, over to north of Williams Lake, down to Cache Creek, Ashcroft, to north of Vernon, stretching through Enderby, back towards the Arrow Lakes, and as far as Invermere, BC, and back to the Alberta border. The Secwepemc territory covers a major part of central, south central, and southern BC. At the height of our strength, pre-colonialism, there were as many as 32 Secwepemc bands, but the smallpox epidemic of 1862 decimated that number down to just 17 bands, which remains the same to this day. My mother is Virginia Gilbert from Sugarcane, also known as Tlacalch. In our language, Tlacalch means charging, and we're at the head of the lake in Williams Lake here, and that represents when the fish begin their journey from the lake back up the streams to lay their eggs. We're also known as the Williams Lake First Nations, formerly known as the Williams Lake Indian Band. My mother's mother and father are the late Rosie and Andrew Gilbert, my pa'a and my ke'a, grandfather and grandmother. My father is the late Frank Supernault, which is not our real last name, and I'll share that story with you in a bit. He was a Cree from Sucker Creek First Nations in northern Alberta. He passed away in March of 2024, and I've spent the last year and a half learning to walk through this world without him. His father and mother are the late Louis Kakanutsit. His stepfather is the late George Ghostkeeper, and his mother is the late Louise Ghostkeeper, Supernant. So I'd like to share about why I carry the name Supernault. My father was taken from his family when he was 4 years old and brought to Jussard Residential School. And he never spoke a lot in his lifetime about his experience at that residential school, but I definitely got the feeling that whenever he brought it up, there was a lot of pain that he carried with him. And I can only imagine from stories that I've heard from my elders of the atrocities and the traumas that were witnessed and happened at those places. When he was 11 years old, he knew, even at that young age, if he was going to survive in this world, that he would have to leave that place. And he took it upon himself at 11. He ran away from Jussard Residential School. He made his way to northern BC, and he took the name Supernault so that the police, the RCMP, and the priests and the people from the residential school wouldn't be able to track him down. So at 11 years old, he knew that he would have to do these things in order to survive. So he carried that name for most of our lives, all of our lives, And it was only just 2 short years ago, not too long before he passed away, that he legally changed his name back to Supernant, which is our actual last name. But we still carry the Supernalt name. The Cree people originate from what is today known as the province of Quebec. They were nomadic people making their way across the northern provinces of Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and into northern Alberta. I've been told throughout my life that it is important to know who my family and my people are, also where they come from, in order to have strong direction in my life. We are tethered to the land in which we are born onto. For me, I was born and raised on Secwep'em-Ulach, Shuswap land. Yet I was brought up with strong ties to my father's Cree ancestry and his teachings around the medicine wheel, the sweat lodge, and the sacred pipe ceremony. Knowing where we come from, having those... Give me just a second here again. Knowing where we come from and having those sacred ties to the land allows us to wander through this world without fear of getting lost along the way, as we know where our home as well as our hearts reside. Both my mother and my father strongly encouraged me to follow my own path growing up, and they made sure that I was involved and around many different ceremonies during my precious early years of development. I remember from a very young age, we would travel to Alberta and Saskatchewan, taking part in the sun dances as well as powwows. One of my first memories was being at a gathering in Morley, Alberta. I was very young. I became very ill. I remember being packed into a teepee. There were several elders there. I was in and out of consciousness. I would wake up from time to time throughout the night, and I could hear these elders speaking their language. They prayed over me all night and sang songs as the fire in the center of the teepee kept the darkness of night at bay. I remember waking up in the morning feeling a lot better, but I mostly remember my big brother Sandy, also known as Lloyd Gilbert, bringing me cake and water. I love cake. This was probably my first meal in days. Later on, as I got older, my mother shared with me her story about what took place that night. She said when I first got sick that she wanted to bring me to the hospital in Calgary, but my dad told her that the elders wanted to do a ceremony for me, the old ways. She was very reluctant, as she was new to these ways, but eventually she let them take me inside this teepee and have the healing ceremony. Mom told me that this was the first time she began to understand our power as First Nations people, and that this is where her faith in our ways began inside of her. All of my life, I have always felt like I never fit in anywhere in normal society, like there was always more. I was meant for more. I had a great purpose. I'm in no way saying that I am better than anybody. I am simply stating that I have always felt a strong connection with spirituality, even from a very young age. I have always felt those relationships with spirit, with our ceremonies, and with our ways. I prefer spirituality over organized religion. I wonder who we were pre-colonization. How did we do things before we were colonized? What ceremonies did we have? These are only some of the questions I wish to have answered with my time here on Mother Earth. I think about powerful leaders that I have read about throughout my life. Leaders like Chief Bigfoot of the Sioux people in the United States. He played a significant role in the history of his people, where he is widely known for having great diplomatic skills. This was shown by being able to maintain peace among rival tribes, particularly after the battle and defeat during the war for the Black Hills, after which he encourages people to adapt to white society while preserving their culture, language, and way of life. Also, Chief Big Bear was known as Mistaha Imasqua. In Cree, that means Big Bear, a powerful leader of the Cree Nation, and is now today called Canada. During the height of his strength, he led a band of 65 lodges Big Bear was mostly known for his resistance to signing Treaty 6, which he believed would lead to devastating consequences for his people. He played a pivotal role in the 1885 Northwest Rebellion and was a key figure in the Cree resistance against being colonized by the Canadian government. I think of Chief Joseph, one of the most recognizable chiefs of our time. He was a prominent leader of the Nez Perce tribe and is famously known for his resistance against the forced relocation of his people by the US government. Chief Joseph led his people from their traditional lands of Wallowa Valley in Oregon State on an 1,170-mile retreat, which is referred today as the Nez Perce War, which took place over several months. Although consisting of men, women, children, elders, the sick, weak, and the dying, they managed to evade the US troops, during which time they also fought off the US cavalry, coming under several attacks as they made their way to seek refuge with Lakota chief, known as Chief Sitting Bull, on his reservation in Canada. Only 40 miles from reaching safety in Canada, Chief Joseph and his people were cornered, and amidst the safety of the Colville tribe of the Okanagan people is where he uttered his famous words, "I shall fight no more forever." He was a great leader who gave everything for his people, including his right as well as their right to live freely on their traditional lands. The rest of his life was spent in his fight for peace. This is where I received my middle name, Colville, after the brave people of the Confederated Colville tribes that inhabit modern-day Omak, USA, who took in Chief Joseph and the Nez Perce. I carry this name gifted to me by my mother with great honor. Earlier this year, my fire was reignited as I watched the news, and I seen many Cree chiefs from Alberta come together and stood with their historical enemy, the Blackfoot Confederacy, to show their strength in a combined fight against Premier Daniel Smith's Bill 54, which promotes Alberta's separation from Canada. The chief said that there is no legal right for talk of separation from Canada without consultation with the First Nations people, famously saying, "If you don't like it, you can leave." This to me was an immediate eye-opener as to the strength our people carry when we stand together. I watched each chief make their statements in a calm and orderly fashion, although I could feel the disdain and anger. Each chief spoke eloquently and made their point precisely. By doing this, they showed true bravery, also proving that we are not the uneducated savages colonizers have made us out to be. So now I just want to take a few minutes to share a bit of my story, where I come from. When I was a child, before I even knew it, my sacred hoop was broken. And when I say my sacred hoop, that is the way that our people raised us. The child in the middle, the parents surrounding them, the aunts and the uncles on the outside, and then the protectors are the fourth part of our circle. And that's how our nations formed and operated under those teachings. When the residential schools came, they took the children from the center of that hoop. And that's what they mean when they say our sacred hoop was broken. There was no more children to pass the education and knowledge on to. The parents, the aunts and the uncles, our language speakers, our traditional people, and our protectors had no reason, no purpose. And that's the biggest part in life, is to have purpose. There was no more purpose. And they were all forced by the government and the RCMP to let those children go to these places. And a lot of alcoholism and drug use came from that place. So at a young age, my sacred hoop was broken before I even knew it. I started to experience sexual abuse between the age of 3 and 5 years old from my older cousin. He went to the residential school and he must have learned that there, and he brought it back to our community. And that was something that he didn't know how to deal with, and he carried it and he passed it on to me. So I've learned to live with the shame and the guilt and the pain and the hurt and the anger, the feelings of being unuseful, unloved, feeling like I'm ugly. All these things that come with sexual abuse and trauma I've carried throughout my life. At the age between 5 and 10 years old, I began to experience physical abuse from my father. And I love my father. He was an amazing man 99% of the time, very knowledgeable in our ways and culture and spirituality, and he taught me how to live and survive in this world. But he also brought some pain back from the residential school experience that I've had to learn how to carry and to deal with and process in my life. And I look back through my healing journey and I can understand why all of a sudden one day I just started getting whipped and beaten. And forgive me for saying this, but as he would be beating me, he would be telling me to shut the fuck up. His words, not mine. Forgive me for swearing. But I've learned through my healing to look back and understand what he must have went through, even though he didn't talk about his residential school experience very much. I can only imagine the pain that he endured and the things that he witnessed, that he knew in order for him to survive at 11 years old, he would have to run away. So I've been able to heal myself and heal that part of my life, and I'm very grateful that I was able to recreate my bond with my father before he passed away. And that's something I'm very grateful for. I endured racism all throughout my school years, being called a dirty Indian because I was wearing hand-me-down clothes with tears and rips in them, being looked down upon, being called stupid and ugly. One of the funny things I look back on now is that people pay big money to wear pants with holes and rips in them. So go figure that. At the age of 13, my mother and my father separated, and I was sent to live with my father in Vancouver. And I started to withdraw from school. I didn't feel welcome. I didn't know anybody's name. Nobody cared to know me, and that's what we call a culture shock. Going from the small town of Williams Lake, where we can look through the crowd of people and we know a few of them and we're related to some of them. And you're always saying hi, people in the supermarket. You go to Vancouver and nobody cares to know you. And I didn't know how to deal with that. I eventually dropped out of school, got involved with crime, selling drugs. At 15 years old, I was down on Hastings Street on Skid Row, witnessing atrocious activities every day of my life. At 17 years old, I witnessed my best friend being stabbed to death in front of me. He was in a street fight, and he was fighting this guy, and there was a circle of people around him. And I happened to notice another guy across the crowd with his hand in his pocket. And I was like, something's not right. And before I could think or do anything, he pulled out, and I seen a knife. And he leaned in and he stabbed my friend in the chest 4 times. And he got him in the heart 3 times. I remember when the blood started and everybody seen it, the whole crowd left. There was nobody there except me and my friend. And I remember him staring up at the sky, laying on the ground, holding his chest, struggling to breathe, trying to catch his breath, tears running down his face. And he happened to look over at me, and we made eye contact. And this probably took less than a minute, but I remember watching him take his last breath, and I could see the life leaving his body. And for a few years after that, I couldn't handle it. I was going through what I understand now is called PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I didn't care whether I lived or I died. I just began to get really crazy, robbing people and stealing cars. Got to the point where me and 4 of my friends were going to go do an armed robbery downtown Vancouver. I had stolen a car, and we were all loaded up that morning. We drove to the alley behind where this jewelry store was we were going to rob. But I'm so grateful and thankful for this that before we could even get out of the car, we were surrounded by police. Went through that whole process of being arrested and detained and brought to a youth detention center. I spent a week there waiting to go to court. Eventually I was released. Now I look back on these things and I'm grateful that I made it, and I was just kind of having a bit of a good discussion with my friend Cecil before everything started this morning. And you know, when we suffer through things like this, and even as we get older, we begin to lose people. And there's been points in my life where I've lost amazing people and had to bury them, and I think, why them? Why not me? They're so beautiful, so amazing. And to begin to understand that that's what they call survivor's remorse. So I'm very grateful for the things that I've had to go through in my life, and I no longer wonder why I'm here. I know why I'm here. I'm living my purpose. But at 19 years of age, I began to drink for the first time in my life. I began not too long after that experimenting with all kinds of drugs. And I found that a very useful tool to distract me from the pains and the traumas of the things that I had seen in my life and witnessed, and the things that I have done. Being physically abusive towards my spouse. I've had 2 beautiful women come into this world, into my life, and brought children into this world for me. I have 3 beautiful children, and to this day I have 2 amazing grandchildren. But I carry that deep regret and the pain and the hurts of becoming somebody that I never thought I would be, which was a physically abusive partner. In 2008, I lost my older brother Gerald. He was murdered in our community, drug and alcohol related. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he seen something he wasn't supposed to see. And he was trying to leave where he was at. Somebody came up behind him and shot him in the back and left him where he lay. It took us 2 months of searching to find him just on the outskirts of our community. That was the first time in my life where I felt like I really didn't want to be here anymore, contemplating suicide. I didn't want to live in this world without my brother. I was living in so much pain and trauma and hurt and having such a broken spirit. I wanted to leave with him. But that was the beginning of my healing journey. That was the first time I was enticed to go deep inside of myself and look inside myself and seek out the strength to carry on, to reach down and go to those deep, dark places that hurt and they're scary, and to begin to look in and to address the things that had happened to me. And from that, I found my warrior spirit. A few years later, on September 7th, 2014, I remember having my last drink of alcohol, holding a beer and having a 40-pounder of rum. Rum and Coke was my favorite drink. I got halfway through my beer and it just tasted bad. And I was thinking the whole time, there has to be more to life. There has to be a better way than sitting around in the same room with the same people for decades talking about the same stories from our childhood. You remember that one time, bro? And we all laugh. And you're like, yeah, this is only about the 1000th time I've heard this story. So I got tired of that and began to look for a better life. Using culture and our ceremonies to better my life, I found this new life where I'm living my dream and helping others find sobriety through their healing. In writing this speech, I've learned a new word, pluralism, which means the recognition and affirmation of diversity within a society where different groups and interests and beliefs coexist and interact peacefully. It goes beyond simple tolerance to see diversity as a source of strength, and proposes that a society should change to include as well as value these different perspectives rather than just expecting assimilation. We are many people from many different nations with our own beliefs, thoughts, and values, yet we all have the same basic goals in our hearts, balancing the continuation of our people, our ways, and our beliefs, all while being intertwined with modern-day society and the confines of assimilation. I understand the importance of recovery places such as the Red Road Center, as I've had my niece go through the Red Road Recovery Center, as well as my good friend. They are both clean and sober to this day. I feel that without places such as the Red Road Center, their recovery may have been a lot more difficult, maybe even impossible. I've sat with both of them and I've heard their stories. They speak about how important the tools they gathered at this place are to them in their recovery journey, and how they've implemented these teachings into their lives to remain sober to this day. They gathered the strength enough to remain clean and sober. They hold the Red Road Recovery Center in the highest of regard. I myself, a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, can see the necessity of having said healing centers in our communities. Our people are still suffering in silence, wounded spirits walking around wounding other spirits. Where does this end? Where does healing begin? Healing begins when our people, all First Nations people, put our differences aside and work together with a common goal of healing together. I pray for a time when we can all sit at the table and play fairly, learn to play together nicely in the sandbox as we were told as children. Let's put our differences aside as the great leaders from around Turtle Island have done in the past. If other nations can stand together in an act of solidarity, bravery, and with decency, then so can we. And all the people in our nations combined will benefit immensely, which I believe is the common goal here. In closing, I would simply like to say, I just want all teams to have fun. So, thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here. I can't really say a lot more, except this is a beautiful event to be asked to come and speak at, to see all the beautiful the faces here.
No problem. But that's a 4-hour drive. And the stories that she shared with me. And there's one that particularly sticks out in my mind. And it starts out, if you know the Shuswap Lake, it's like, it's 4 arms. And it has a thing in the middle called the Narrows, or the arms, and there's the Shuswap arm, the Salmon arm, the Anstey arm, and the Seymour arm. So there was this family that, this story is hundreds and hundreds of years old, and I'll get to that, why she was proud of it. But there's this family that basically ran the Seymour arm. They were called the Tamaz, and it morphed into today the Toma family. And she's saying that your guys' family, and the Tomas is a big family in my community of Squalax, they come from that area of the Seymour arm. There's none of us living up there anymore. It's all been colonized, and the non-natives have taken it over. But she said this story was handed down from her grandmother for many, many generations. It's probably 1,000 years old, this story. The story goes that when they were running that portion of the lake up there, they realized they had 2 females in the group, beautiful girls. And back in the day, when, we would encroach on other nations, we would go and raid other nations, or they would come and raid us for food, or genetic purposes, steal the females, things like that. So that group went through a, what's the fancy word? A paradigm shift. A shift in the way they did things. And it created conflict, friction within that group with regards to teaching what was anointed for the young males, all the hunting and all that sort of stuff, all the things that was supposed to be for the male. But they said, we got to teach this to the female. And it was a big hoopla in that group of the Toma family up there. And they finally come to a conclusion that, yes, we will teach these 2 young ladies, they were like, 8, 9 years old, or 10, or whatever it was, how to live off the land, how to survive out in the wilderness. And part of it was a vision quest, where they would go out and being thrown out in the bush for several weeks to survive and test out what they know. And part of it was what they saw in their mind, and being 9 or 8 or years old or whatever it was, you're scared. They're probably frightened, probably scared, really scared. It's dark and there's animals all over the place, and they, but they did put pictographs up. And she says, if you go to the Narrows, there's a pictograph. It looks like a black widow, that red thing, the hourglass thing. That was one of the pictographs that they designed for themselves because they saw the bust, the waist, and the hips. And it still exists today. So lo and behold, the Kootenai came up from all the way from Cranbrook area and stole those 2 girls. And they brought them all the way back to Cranbrook. And that's a couple 100 kilometers over the mountains and across waterways, et cetera, et cetera. And the girls did escape. Mary went on about the story that they saw the torches along the lake, and they learned how to make these reed floating apparatus, like a boat, I guess, or just like life jackets, for the lack of a better term. They went across the Arrow Lakes, and they got away, and they got back home. So that was a good story, but I was wondering why she's told me that story, and it took me a good couple of years to figure it out. It was about, because I was in a leadership position in my community. I was an elected councillor, and I was on council for 30 plus years. And she was telling me that story about 2 things. Shifting the way we think. Remember, the community was in a big hoopla about teaching the females? And they did this for thousands of years, and they had to change the way we thought. The way we think, whether nation or government, we all got to change and shift to meet the needs of the people. That was the first moral of the story, I guess. So when we go away, we have to open our blinders, get out of our silos, and start thinking a little bit different on how to figure out how to fight this monster out there. I call it the monster. It's, the opioid crisis. The second part of the story was because Mary was so proud because her grandma told her the story. So I saw it as the women were anointed these rites of passage that have been in place for thousands of years, and her grandma told that story, and it landed with Mary. So I saw 2 things there, and it was a great story, and I loved it. And that's what I want to talk about a little bit today. Is we gotta work together and figure out ways. I know there's rules and regulations, whether it's in our governments or British Columbia or Canada, but there's ways to help needle or be malleable or to meet an objective. We got to work together. We got to work together. Or we're going to still be in the same spot a year from now, 5 years from now. If we work together, and I've seen it, terrorists, I've seen it in our territory. I've seen it happening here. If we work together in partnership with government, partnership with each other, you can make stuff happen. And I've seen it happen, and it's happening, and it's a beautiful thing, because I don't know how many people have gone through our doors and how many people are healthy today. That's the real dividend. It ain't about money. It ain't about that. It's about the real dividend of seeing people contributing to their families proud of them. That's the real dividend. So this Red Road Recovery started out, my buddy Chris here, I've known him for near 10 years. He phones me up with his ludicrous idea. He says, "Hey, Wes, I got an idea." So he phones me, and then I say, "Okay, it sounds like a great idea. Let's do it." But at that time, I was an elected official for my community, and we had these 3-band meetings down there, 3-band chief and council meetings. We fill up the gymnasium with a couple 100 band members from each of the communities, and man, did I ever get lambasted. I felt a bit, maybe shame, or a bit like I'm not doing enough, but they had an open mic, and then the family members would stand up and say, "You guys ain't doing enough. I just lost my daughter, or I lost my brother." And we're like, holy cripes, we got to do something. And I kind of noticed we weren't working together. So I said, what do I do? And that's when Chris phones me, just out of the blue. The planets aligned, the stars aligned, everything aligned. He met Scott. We got together and we started the first outfit out in Sereno. And that's how it started. And it's just been going ever since, because it's needed. It's accepted. You can have forestry meetings and you can have, fishery meetings, all that sort of stuff. But when you have these type of meetings with the community, you see the need. And I've been blessed to be part of this, and all I want to do is help. And here we are doing that. And when I'm a old man, 90 years old, 100 years old, and hopefully can transfer my stuff to AI, or we were talking about AI earlier. But, this is the legacy. The legacy is to help people. And there's all of you all in this room, you have the same goal. You all have the same goal, every one of you. You just need to get together and hash it all out, whether it's the business or whether it's politics or whether it's money or whether it's whatever it is. But the end game is to help your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, your grandkids, whatever. Your great-grandkids, the kids that don't even exist. That's where you're helping. 7 generations, right? You know what I mean? That's all I have to say about that. If you want to know about go down a rabbit hole about the business end of things, these guys are your guys. I bring the culture. I continually spur the cultural piece with Red Road Recovery. It's important to me. It's my cat, Daisy Running Bear. She's dual citizenship, and she married Dale Running Bear out of Montana. And I was a kid. My dad was a single dad. Not much love there. I was pretty feral, right? No rules, growing up. But I would always my dad would always make me go with my grandma. And we'd travel up and down the western seaboard here between, Mission and all the way down, all the way down the States there, do powwows. My cousin Vernie would dance, and they'd have a drum group, and I wasn't that guy. I was the kid in the parking lot hustling for Bannock and all that sort of stuff. But in driving and living that lifestyle, I didn't know I was taking it all in. And now that my grandma's gone, and I see my dad, who was part of the residential school, they're all getting really old, and now I'm in a position now to continue that pride through Red Road Recovery, bring the culture, right? When we go to different nations, such as, like I'm from Secwepemc, southern Secwepemc, and our sites is Secwepemc, Ulu. But when we go to Terrace, it's different up there. We're talking Niska, Gitsan, et cetera, et cetera. So their culture is a little bit different. So what we try to do is extract their knowledge keepers, and they have the artistic freedom to develop their own program. And I heard some cool ideas that they're looking at up there. Harvesting a tree, because they're all about carving and stuff. Do a ceremony, all that sort of jazz, build a longhouse. Each of the clients will be able to help participate in carving a totem pole, right? And then erect the totem pole. And then when they go home, whether they're from this area or Carmax or Sutina, or whether in Calgary or in the central interior British Columbia here, they'll be able to say, hey, I helped learn how to carve a totem pole if that's where some of the clients go. Or they can come down south and learn some Secwepemc, or even south in Sealks Nation, that's Okanagan, that's where Lumbee is. So you get to be able to showcase your own culture here. whoever the knowledge keeper is going to be to help build that cultural program here in this nation. So that's the cool thing about it. Showcase your stuff to other nations. That's all I have to say about this. Cook's Jam for listening to my little story. And I'll hand the mic over to either Scott or Chris here. So Cook's Jam, guys.
Hello, everyone. So yeah, I'm Chris Cudmore, one of the co-founders. I'm the human being of the group. I just like to keep it simple. One thing Wes never does mention is he's 30 years sober. So when I met Wes, yeah, yeah, he's getting a little older since then, so maybe 33 years. But yeah, when I first met Wes, I'd be at parties. I'd moved to the shoe shop, and I was not sober then. Wes would be always the quiet guy. Well, he wasn't quiet, but he'd be in the corner of the room. And I'd always gravitate to him, and I'd listen to him talk about the problems his nations were having. I dove deep around that same time into my own addiction. I went to treatment myself and found some help, and came out of that, and I met Scott. And so, like, Scott is the most passionate person I've ever met about addiction. And I just felt really fortunate. I had these two people that I knew, and it just, like you said, the stars aligned. I thought, you know what, like, if we get these, like, three of us together, and yeah, we sat down, and the idea of the Red Road was formed. And like today, if I look back at what we've accomplished so far, I don't attribute it to any one of us. I do. I feel like we're guided by something beyond us, whether the Creator. There's something pushing us, and the further we go, the more doors open. And so we're just we're just proud to be here and this opportunity before us. So that's really my part, and thank you very much, and I'll turn it over to Scott.
Thanks, Chris. My name is Scott Tremblett. I am the CEO of Red Road Recovery, but I'm an addictions counselor, and first and foremost, I'm an alcoholic and an addict in recovery. And all three of us are in recovery, and this matters to us. I'm a little thrown off because Len's speech there really touched me, and I wish he was still here around, because I just wanted to thank him again, because I got mad love and respect for that man, and that really touched my heart because I relate to some of his story. So the whole idea was taking, we wanted to have the 4 pillars, right? Like, we've always believed, well, a little bit about, sorry, I'm still thrown off by Len's speech. It keeps playing over in my head because of that survivor's guilt. When he said that just really touched me. My best friend was also killed, and it really, I related to that. So I just, starting over. A little bit about my story. I suffered for a long time, and I was just trying to get myself together so I could get back to what I was doing. It took me 5 times in treatment. 4 out of 5 times I left early because I thought I knew too much, and clearly I did not know. So I struggled with spirituality. And early on in my recovery, I was invited into ceremony in Sweat Lodge, and it changed me. And it continued to change me. And I knew that the path forward would be combining evidence-based therapies and traditional Indigenous cultural programming alongside of the 12 steps, because that is part of my journey. And the path just kept moving forward, and I got inspired. I went back to school. I became an addictions counselor. I worked my way up in the treatment center from volunteer to driver to support worker to counselor, and I ended up running that treatment center that I got sober at. And then it just kind of continued from there. And then, I was blessed to meet Chris, and then we had lots of conversations, and we shared many stories and thoughts. And then, lo and behold, Wes came, and it was like, the 3 Musketeers. We just kind of put our heads together, and just like they mentioned, it's been like this serendipitous journey where we just keep asking ourselves, how can we help more people? And when we focus on that question alone, the right doors keep opening. I'm a huge believer in we are where we are because we're meant to be there, and I believe that the only reason I survived was to be doing what we're doing right now. And this is near and dear to our hearts, and we never lose focus of that. The 4 pillars was we always knew we wanted to create a full continuum of care. So that's going from detox to treatment to transitional housing with wraparound programs and community care. When we had first kind of dreamed this up, we were calling them healing hubs, and we did have the benefit to, bounce off this whole plan off government, and people in government change, and we wanted to get the ball rolling. We did establish our first center in 2022, which was our Sorrento Center. And it was a 7-bed center, 7,000 square foot building on 4 acres. And it was the beginning of this journey. And we just really leaned into it, just bootstrapped it and made it happen. And it just worked. It started working, and we started seeing people heal, and we just knew that we were onto something that was working. We knew that we really wanted to lean into the land-based healing element, and we always wanted to add equine therapy. So we started hunting for a ranch. And we went to go tour this other ranch, and it didn't work out for reasons. And we just kind of happened to come across another ranch in Lumbee, and then we went and toured it. And, it's the same feeling that we got when we stood the first day on the Deer Creek Ranch. It was just, we knew that it's like, okay, this is the right place. And, our ranch in Lumbee, the further we started exploring it, we found there's this rock that came off the mountain, and there's all this history, and there's real pictographs on the mountain, like on this rock on the property, and it's just such an amazing, you feel the spirit when you step on that land. And that's what's been guiding us all along, is the feelings. We just really, something is guiding us. I truly, truly believe that. And so the ranch turned out to be 25 beds, adding to our network. One of our goals was always bringing public funding into the private sector. We wanted to provide services for free to the people, right? We wanted to provide high quality care for free to the people. We didn't want to turn into a government funded center completely, and that's not any derogatory thing I'm saying against government funding facilities. It's just we had built something that had high quality care in the private sector, and we just had this goal that we wanted to bring public funding into the private sector and really merge the two and partner with different nations. So we did apply for a grant through CMHA, and we were awarded a large grant through CMHA for 23 publicly funded beds, and that we were so grateful to acquire. And then we rolled that out, and we didn't even advertise it. It was just word of mouth about us getting the public funds, and within 3 weeks we had like a 6-month waiting list. And it's just illuminated once again the huge need that is in front of us. And like Wes mentioned, it's this monster, right, that we're all up against, but we're never going to stop fighting. So we just kept pushing, and we knew that this was just the beginning. So we rolled out the publicly funded beds, and then we added the equine therapy, as I mentioned, which was a huge success, and just leaned into the land-based healing. And we continued our journey, and we acquired another facility in Salmon Arm, another 10-bed facility, and then just kept pushing forward. And we knew that this was just the beginning of our journey. And lo and behold, the Northern First Nation Alliance up in Terrace reached out, and they came and toured, and we ended up flying out to Terrace. And another one of those serendipitous moments where the right property found us once again, where it's the one that we were looking at wasn't the right one, and we stumbled on this other property, and it ended up being the right one. We knew it from the moment we stepped foot on it. And now that's going to be opening up here. We're literally flying out there on Sunday to do the grand opening on Tuesday, and that facility will be up and running in January. And our journey continued out here, and I'm so grateful it did, because this region is just in such dire need, and we are just so grateful to be part of this meaningful initiative. And it's the biggest thing too. We wanted to. I'll just touch a little bit about our program itself. What we thought would be the catalyst. We get asked all the time, what sets you apart? And it's the role of culture in recovery. You know, like I see in the industry a lot of treatment centers kind of giving a nod to the culture, and that's great, and I know everybody's doing their best, but we really put a primary focus on the culture, and we immerse our clients within that. So, you know, we utilize evidence-based therapies, the biopsychosocial model of recovery, and then we blend it with traditional Indigenous cultural programming. We onboard local elders, we do sweat lodge weekly, we do water ceremonies, we do medicine wheel teachings, we take them out on the land with the elders, medicine picking, and much, much more. And we're always trying to, yeah, sometimes I go off script because presentations are not my jam. It's more so I just speak from the heart because I just, you know, we live and breathe this. So yeah, it's like we really dig into that culture, and I can tell you firsthand, watching the effect on our clients. It's like, you know, we had an alumni pop in today, and I heard from some other alumni today that reached out just knowing that we're here, and it's just like that just warms my heart, right? That's why we do what we do, because it comes back to that question of how can we help more people. And when I see the benefits and the results of the people that we help living the lives that they were always meant to live, it makes me very emotional. And what's that? Yeah. And yeah, so again, we take the evidence-based therapies. That's the biopsychosocial model of recovery. That's just that really deep clinical work that you'll find at treatment centers, but we blend it with a robust cultural program that we believe is what sets us apart and really elevates our success rate. You know, we also utilize the 12 steps. It's part of my journey and the Wellbriety. And I know with Len out here doing the White Bison, I think that's huge. And I think we're going to be bringing that out here as well. And it's just such an amazing program that we want to blend with what we already do. And yeah, like the plan out here is that full continuum of care, right? It's people go into detox, and if they don't have anywhere to go, statistics show us that they're gonna fail, right? For the most part, you get the odd person that doesn't, but for the most part, people that go to detox only, it's not enough. And then from detox to treatment to transitional housing is the path forward. And I absolutely love that in this region, we're gonna have pre-treatment, because so many people get, you know, they sit on that waiting list, and I don't know, for me, if I would have had to wait 6 months on a waiting list, I'd be dead. I can tell you that right now, I would be dead. And that's not okay. You know, like our vision is we want anybody that needs help that can be in a bed in no longer than 2 weeks. And there's no reason why we can't do that if we all work together. If we partner and we continue pushing, you know, pressure on government and just to keep pushing forward as one united front, I believe it's more than possible to achieve this goal. Like our goal is to work ourselves out of a job. Like that's what I truly want, is I want this healing as far and wide as we can possibly push it and save as many people as we can, because everybody deserves this. Everybody. And the pre-treatment is the supportive housing it's going to be one gap that we identified is it was especially with the launch of our publicly funded beds, is we realized that a lot of people coming into our program, once they get off the drugs and the alcohol, all of a sudden they have a lot of medical needs and dentists and all sorts of different things that need triaging that gets in the way of them truly getting their best foot forward with the treatment. So this idea of having pre-treatment here is going to make such a huge difference that people coming out of detox can go to the pre-treatment, they can triage any medical needs, any dentist, anything, even alleviate fears, right? Because sometimes we'll have people go through detox and they take off because they're scared. I remember being one of those people that was scared. And so this pre-treatment with some soft programming and the ability to triage a lot of these needs prior to coming to treatment is going to be just so huge, and I believe it's going to elevate our success numbers significantly. And after they leave the pre-treatment, then they go to our primary treatment, which I've already described. And then, you know, the biggest gap that we have seen, like aside from detox, is what comes after treatment is vital. You know, I know for me, I got sober and then it was like, now what, right? So we believe that having this post-treatment transitional housing with wraparound programs, with all of the program available for skills training, education, and basic life skills, because a lot of times people don't even have the basic life skills, and it's not fair, and they deserve that. So, you know, having this full continuum of care where someone can be struggling and desperate and getting into a detox bed, followed by pre-treatment and then primary treatment, and then followed up with going to transitional housing for up to 2 years. Like post-acute withdrawal syndrome lasts for up to 2 years. So having the ability to have a place to stay for that long, now we're talking about a success rate that's gonna rise and rise. And that's what we're all about. You know, we say build with purpose, and it's, you know, for me, I had to find my purpose. And it's, like a big part of what we do is helping people find their purpose, and we're committed to providing the tools to do so. One major initiative that we're rolling out is we've created a foundation that we're using some of our funds that we're putting aside for our alumni program, that the alumni that go through our program that achieve a 1 year of sobriety, we will actually provide some funding towards some education for them, and we will provide practicums within our centers, and once they get certified, we will hire them into our Red Road family, creating purpose and a path forward to success. And it's, you know, that's my story, right? And I wanna share that opportunity to as many people as we can. And we were gonna read this, but honestly, like one thing we wanted to mention that she won't say it herself, but we just wanted to give a really big, heartfelt thank you and kudos to Judy. Judy, you've done such amazing work with your team that it boggles the mind. So I just really wanted to honor you in everything you've done, and if we can get a round of applause for Judy. And I'd actually like to invite her up to read the vision statement, mission statement, and value statement, if you don't mind.
Thank you very much for that. It was really sweet. Melt my heart. This was one of my, when I first saw my job description, Connie gave me, when Connie hired me to work at TNG to help with this, one of the deliverables from the Ministry of Health was like create a vision and mission and values statement. It took me about 6 or 7 months. I spent time with UNICEF very closely working with the people there, and it just took, you know, I wanted this to be right. So I'm honored to be able to share these with you guys, because I think just spending time out west and spending time in many communities. I worked for Williams Lake First Nation, and I worked with Adam First Nation, and now with the ilhqot'in communities, and I have family members in all those communities, and it just, you know, I wanted this to be right, so I hope you guys will feel these deeply like I do. So the vision statement: we envision a holistic recovery model rooted in Indigenous knowledge, guiding individuals from first steps to full reintegration through culturally grounded care. Our path includes acceptance, empowers healing through life skills and recognition, restoring spirits, uplifting families, and strengthening communities. The mission statement: our mission is to walk alongside our relatives on their healing journey, recognizing addiction as an illness that clouds the spirit but does not define the person. We honor the sacredness of each soul, guiding them with respect, love, and traditional wisdom to help them reclaim balance, purpose, and their rightful place in the circle of life. And the value statement: we are guided by the sacred principles of respect, love, and traditional wisdom. We believe healing is a journey rooted in culture, community, and connection. We honor the dignity of every person, walking beside them with compassion and understanding. Our work is grounded in the belief that recovery is possible for all, and that restoring balance to the individual helps heal families and strengthens the spirit of our communities.
Thank you, Judy. That was beautiful. So the last thing we just wanted to show you was this is our red road to recovery across the country, across British Columbia. We believe in what we're doing. We believe this continuum of care can be rolled out throughout the province in partnerships with many different nations and health authorities and the province. And we believe that change is more than possible. And on behalf of my partners and I, we'd like to thank the ilhqot'in National Government, the province of British Columbia, and all of you for trusting us with this most important endeavor. So thank you, and we look forward to helping many, many, and to the path ahead of us. The slide, I'm told, so let's, we just had a few stats that I think are important. See, sometimes I just roll from the heart and then I lose track of our presentation. It's actually a common theme.
If you noticed, I was trying to kind of jab them from the back.
We're going to create a safe word to keep me on track, I think. So yeah, 75% of our clients are First Nation. We do have non-Indigenous clients as well that love the program and benefit from it. To date, we've served 499 clients. Our success rate, 50%. So I'd like to just discuss what that's based on. Is we had to decide on what metric to measure our success rate. So we chose to measure it on how many of our alumni are staying sober over the 1 year mark. So that's the metric we chose. And we have an aftercare program. We have an alumni program that we reach out to our alumni and we stay in touch with them. So we gather those statistics and that data. And through that work, we found out that 50% of our clients are staying sober over the 1 year mark. And a couple of them just put their hands up. No, it's it warms my heart. It's why we do what we do, and I believe that this model, in partnership with many different nations and with the involvement of the province to help us complete the continuum of care, I believe that number could be 75%. I truly do. And our completion rates, 70% of our clients are completing the program. And then we just did a little bit of math of, this is clean days in our program. So this is, 24,399 clean days within our program to date. And as we continue to expand, that number is going to compound. And that makes me very happy. And then, 90% approval rate of anybody coming through our programs would recommend us to others. And I think I just killed another 3 minutes. But again, sincerely, thank you for trusting us. It means the world. So, thank you.
Thank you for inviting us up here today. It truly is, it really is nice to be back up here. We're up here in May. I don't get up to the north of BC very often, and it's such a beautiful area. I spend a lot of time in my summers down in the Okanagan area, on the Okanagan Indian Band land where we lease a cabin. We've been fortunate enough to have a family cabin down there for about 40 years now. And so thank you if there's anyone from the Okanagan Indian Band here for allowing us to be on your land. I want to say that when I came back to this portfolio, I was on the seniors portfolio for quite some time before this. And when I was asked to come back to this, one thing I said to the deputy minister was, I'll come back under one condition: if we can do things differently or have the opportunity to try and do things differently. I looked at the numbers of people that have died, as you all know, and of course, represented by a significant Indigenous population that have died. Over 17,000 people now, and I went, we're still not doing something right from government's perspective if we're still having this many people die. We need to try something different. We need to do things differently. We need to look at different ways of doing things. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good work. Health authorities, I know they're here, and government, and everyone's doing what we can, but there's more we have to do. So I was given that blessing, and working with a team is to say, let's look at doing things differently. So when we have ideas that have come up that are really, community-led, community-driven, it's Red Road, it's the perfect example of what we need to be doing. And we need to be doing more of it. And I will say that the mandate of the minister, it's in her mandate letter, is to continue expanding Indigenous-led treatment and recovery. And that's what we're going to continue to do. And I'll be honest, I'm probably to a fault. I'm too honest sometimes. But I will say it, it's, budget is a huge problem for government right now. We all know that. There's all sorts of restrictions happening in government now, and spending, less spending. But my job and Bethany's job is we've got to keep pushing government hard for that bucket of money that we need, to expand and continue to deliver the services that we need to deliver. So really what we're hoping to talk about today, and Bethany's going to go through, we've heard about Red Road recovery, and I want to acknowledge we're going to need to do a lot more of this, and I want to hear from you, and each community may need something a little bit different too. We're going to have to look at what that's like in the future. And our commitment will be to have those conversations and see what we can do. But right now we're actually doing some things that you've probably heard of as well, and the health authorities. The health authorities in the room somewhere, I think, are they? Here they are. Doing some thank you for a lot of good work around Road to Recovery. It's new in Interior. It's still developing. It's not perfect yet, but I think it's doing a remarkable job, and it's only going to get better. I was at the Road to Recovery in Vancouver at St. Paul's Hospital, and there was really, really good evidence of how well that program is working in that area for Indigenous population particularly, and the feedback, qualitative and quantitatively, that we were able to see from that site is another example of the really good work I think that's happening, and we're getting to some solutions to this huge challenge that we're all facing. So Bethany's going to walk through a little bit of the work that we're doing around Road to Recovery in government, and then we want to be able to answer questions and hear your ideas and thoughts. But thank you all for your work and that you're doing and your support, and I'll hand it to Bethany.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Bethany Esterver, and I'm the Executive Director for Adult Substance Use Treatment and Recovery Services, Ministry of Health, working with Ross and Judy and others to support this wonderful work that's happening. And I'm so grateful to be here, actually. I haven't presented in person in quite some time, so like Len said, it's a bit of nervousness, but good nervousness. For me, it really signals that this work is important. And we're nervous because we care about it, and we care about it being successful, and that success depends on partnerships with communities, with organizations like Red Road Recovery, and with all of you. I think you can skip right, maybe to slide 3. Unlike Scott, I will unfortunately probably not be brief today. I'm not known for brevity, but I'm going to do my best. And you can cut me off with questions, Judy, if I go too far to the end. But really what I just want to talk about today is provide a bit of a bigger picture of how the Red Road recovery that Scott and Wes and Judy have been talking about fit into the bigger picture of work that's happening across the province and in the Interior region. And a little bit about what we've heard from community and communities like yourselves, and what we're doing to try to respond to that and address some of the challenges and needs that we're hearing about and that we know exist and that are impacting people and communities on the ground. You can go on to the next one. So what we're working towards as a province is really building a full continuum of treatment and recovery services and mental health and substance use services across the province. And in the treatment and recovery space, that is really looking at that continuum of services, right from withdrawal management and detox, through to pre-treatment or stabilization, treatment, recovery, and longer-term ongoing aftercare aftercare services and supports. And we know a really important part of that is making it easier to access services for people and easier to transition between services, whether that's someone making their way from withdrawal management to treatment, or being connected from treatment to that ongoing support they need to be ongoing successful in their recovery journey. And we really know strong partnerships are the way to do this, and the key to being able to achieve this. And I think the example that TNG talked about today is a really strong example of where partnerships can come together to bring forward new models of care that can really address some of the challenges that we've seen and that we're continuing to see right now in our system and the services that we have. They're also really key to ensuring that we have culturally safe and culture-focused services. Indigenous-led developed models and Indigenous-led services are key to that. And they're a really important example of how we're working in health to try to meet some of the recommendations made in plain sight and some of the commitments in the Declaration Act action plan of the province. So what does this look like on the ground? It looks like new and expanded services through investments like a model of care we're rolling out in partnership with Interior Health that Ross mentioned, the Road to Recovery. It looks like investments through the Canadian Mental Health Association that Scott and Wes talked about with some of their site in Sorrento. It also is looking at expanding services that are Indigenous-led, like I mentioned. And like Ross mentioned, that's an important part, a key really to making sure that we have a continuum of care that actually meets the needs of communities in all parts of the province and here in the interior as well. In particular, it also includes not just expanding the services and implementing new ones, but looking at how we're delivering existing services. And this is where I'll talk a little bit later about Road to Recovery, but this is where that model comes in, and really adjusting how and shifting models of how we deliver services to make it easier for people. And in the end, what we're aiming to have here in the interior and in all parts of the province is really a system of care that works harder for people, and so that people and communities and families don't have to do all the work they're doing now to try to access services they need, to try to create care plans, but rather we have a system that does that work behind the scenes. You can go to the next slide. And we know we have a ways to go. We hear a lot about the challenges, and those challenges are really guiding how we develop our services and the plans that are being made. We hear a lot right now that our substance use services aren't fully meeting the needs of communities members. We continue to hear examples of culturally unsafe experiences, and we know that more Indigenous-led services are needed to counterbalance that and make sure we have a culturally safe and focused continuum of care in the province. We hear a lot about the challenges of geography, and I know that is really, really relevant here. And I was just hearing today about how far people are traveling for this meeting, and I know that's really an extremely big barrier that people face when accessing treatment and trying to access services, particularly when families and individuals are in crisis. So looking at transportation and travel and how do we make that easier to serve for people is a really important goal for us as we roll out the Road to Recovery in the interior and as we look at investing in new services like the model that TNG is building here in Williams Lake. And of course, it also impacts health, human resources, and hiring. And this is where those partnerships with Red Road Recovery and other partners and communities are really needed to overcome some of these challenges. You can go on to the next slide. So this is just a little bit of a snapshot of how we're funding and delivering treatment and recovery services right now in BC. There's sort of three main buckets. One of those are services that we deliver in partnership with health authorities, and that's Interior Health, other regional health authorities, and the Provincial Health Services Authority. It includes a range of bed-based services, treatment beds, recovery beds, withdrawal management beds. But it also includes really important outpatient services and supports and access to things like the opioid treatment access line that's available 7 days a week virtually that can be accessed anywhere in the province, as well as a full range of psychosocial supports and outpatient models as well. In addition to the regional health authorities and the provincial health authority, First Nations Health Authority provides really important services for substance use and mental health in BC. Those are services that are funded through FNHA and delivered in partnerships with nations. And we have 8 FNHA-funded treatment centers in the province and 4 nation-led centers that are being funded through health in partnership with FNHA, including TNG and the model that they spoke about today. In addition to both of these, we also have 307 treatment and recovery beds that we fund and deliver in partnership with the Canadian Mental Health Association of BC. And I wanted to share a little bit about that because, as Scott mentioned earlier, some of those beds are at their site in Sorrento, and these are beds that often people don't know about. They're beds that anybody can refer to. There's free, there's no cost, and they're available across the province for people. Yeah. So this is how we're funding and delivering services. And if you can look at the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the way the system that we have now and what we're moving towards. And this is some of the challenges I think that we've heard about and that you've probably experienced kind of show up here when we look at the old system. We are moving from a system where people, like I said, are working really, really hard to access services. And that looks like calling multiple services to put names on wait lists, sometimes calling those services back to try to find out when they have an intake date, when their name will come to the top of that list. Results in people making decisions, sometimes about not fully knowing what services are available to them or what the best and right care would be for them, but really just based on what might be available first. And we end up having a system that not only isn't meeting people's needs, but it also isn't functioning very efficiently. And we have multiple wait lists. And long-term wise, people are coming out of services without having a care plan for the next step in their journey. And as a result, they're getting disconnected from care. People relapse, they go home without a plan, and start that cycle again. And we know that isn't best for people or for communities. And what we really are moving towards in the province is a model of care called the Road to Recovery that is looking at how do we get rid of some of these barriers, get rid of some of the fragments, and make it much easier to access services. And a key part of that is that first step below called Access Central. And that is one number in each region that people can call to access information on what's available and have a same day conversation with a nurse and doctor, an assessment and conversation to make a plan about what is the right and best service for them, what is the right level of care they need, whether it's withdrawal management, detox, or stabilization, and then start that journey. It gets rid of having multiple wait lists, and it takes the burden off of families and communities to do this planning. It also allows the health authority and partners to really match people to the right level of care, using the resources we have the best we can in the province, and really looking at taking a person's individual circumstances and needs into consideration. So being able to look at how urgent is their need, and what else is happening in their life that might mean they need to get into care right away rather than sitting on a wait list for longer waiting. And then, of course, having that same team being able to support people and planning for each stage of their journey so we don't have those gaps that people are falling into. So this is the vision, and we have some ways to go. And the next slide kind of shows you a little bit where we are in the interior on this. So the focus has been on implementing this Access Central in each region, and Ross mentioned we have it in Vancouver. It's been operating there for about a year and a half, not just for Vancouver, but for the rural parts of the Vancouver Coastal Health region. And we're seeing a huge difference already. We're seeing a difference in getting people to the right level of care and what that means for their success. And we're also seeing a significant reduction in wait times for everybody. Right now, I think people are waiting up to about 7 days, with people that are assessed as urgent being able to access same-day care. And it's taking us a while to implement that model in every region. Every region and community is different, but it really is the goal and the vision that we're working towards. So here in the interior, phase 1 started of this in June, and I know that it started as a bit of an interim process, and so it isn't operating right now to the full vision, but we're getting there. So it started in June with Access Central operating and taking some calls, but not from everybody. Not a service where just anybody can call and get that true vision. It was calls coming from withdrawal management centers once somebody had called in, and it's been a bit. I know we've heard it's been a bit rocky. I think the good news is we're really close to that December 30th date, and that's where that by the end of December, where we're going to have that number open so that people can call themselves. There's not these multiple steps anymore, but people can call themselves or with support of a community member or family member, access somebody on the call that day, start that conversation to start that care planning. So we're getting closer. And there's more information to come on that. I know Interior Health is looking and doing some work to start conversations in communities to talk more about that model. You can keep going here. But I wanted to share this because this is a little bit of the vision of how we see Road to Recovery and Red Road Recovery, Red Road River coming together to really have a well-rounded continuum of service for people and communities in and near Williams Lake. So if you look at the dots in the blue there, those are services that are being provided through and funded through the province and provided through Interior Health or some CMHA beds. And you can really see that they integrate, and together with the services that are being planned through TNG and Red Road River with Red Road Recovery, is we're going to end up with a very well-rounded continuum where people here can access services for each step on their journey. And so we don't have those gaps anymore. And it's really exciting. It is the vision of what we hope to bring to all parts of the province. And we're excited it's coming so soon to Williams Lake. And we can keep going. There's a lot of context around, maybe I won't go into too much detail about this, but there's a lot of context and history around the partnerships that are important. It's an important part of the province's and Ministry of Health's response to Truth and Reconciliation commitments, recommendations, and insights from In Plain Sight report, and commitments made by the province and the ministry through the action plan in response to the Declaration on Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. In addition to those big kind of overarching frameworks, there's some really specific agreements that are in place that guide our work. There's the Pathways Agreement with TNG that includes a healthy families and children component, and we've worked through that component with TNG in the area of mental health and substance use. We also have a letter of understanding that was put in place in 2024 to really commitment to work together on improving and supporting mental health and substance use services here for this part of the province, and funding through that, a funding commitment to bring these services to fruition. And we're really grateful for the partnership and for how much work. We know it's a lot of work through TNG and through Red Road Recovery to make that vision come, and we're grateful for that and excited to see it come to fruition. Go on to the next slide. So I won't talk too much about the model because I feel like you've heard from folks today that could speak to it better than I can. But I did just want to end by saying that we're so very excited to know what this will mean for people in the near communities near Williams Lake, and to have this come together and weaving together the existing and new health authority services, as well as these culture-focused models, to really bring the strongest continuum that we can for people. Having seen this happen and start to happen in a few other communities, we know the impacts can be significant. And that's what really matters, right? Is that it can be, we can see these practical improvements on the ground for people when they go to look for the services they need, and people aren't feeling alone in that struggle, both to get themselves and people they love help, and to continue to support when people come back to the community. So you can keep going. I think there's going to be a question period, and we're here to answer any questions you might have, in addition to TNG and Red Road Recovery. And we're also interested in hearing from you. I hope this is a good example of how what we hear from community does impact how we make decisions and how planning that happens in the Ministry of Health. And it's important for us to know if there's shifts happening in your region, in your community, that we should have in our minds as planning evolves, so we can make sure the services really are meeting the needs on the ground. And we're also interested in hearing if you have additional community strengths or resources that you think can really contribute to the vision and how we can, and conversations how to integrate those approaches. There's a few more slides, and I think it's okay, we don't have to go through them. They're just some information in case you want to take it home and you want to find out a bit more about any of the services in the region. And of course, our contact information too, if some questions come up after today. So again, thank you so much. I hope I didn't take up too much time, but just really appreciate being able to be here, support this work, and be available for any questions you might have. And I didn't go over time, so I've proven myself wrong.
All right. We are going to do a panel-style question and answer. Just have some unofficial discussions, and hopefully you'll feel confident to put up your hand and ask. So if I could have Connie Jasper from TNG and the Red Road team, and we'll have our Ministry of Health team come on up, and I'll ask some questions that were submitted to the box.
Pre-screen for all of our clients, so anything that is beyond our scope of care, we would refer out. We don't handle like high complex care, so but if it was within the realm of our scope of care, then we would, but that's all determined within the pre-screen process.
If that did not answer your question, put up your hand and I can get some elaboration on there. Okay. Yep.
So it's not that it didn't answer my question, it was awesome, but what is the scope? So like what is the limit to the mental health? Because I just think of people that I work with and their mental health complexities, and sometimes they are, okay, I'm not yelling loud enough, and sometimes they are a barrier. So there's one particular client I'm thinking of who, you know, like schizophrenia, things like that, there's literally Redfish is the only facility in the province. So, and they're not the only person. So that is just my question, like what degree of complexity of mental health conditions, where's the line for Red Road River?
Yeah, no, I'll use that as an example. So we would take in clients with schizophrenia. Just typically it would be if they are medicated. So if they're on the injection or it's stabilized, right? If it was severe schizophrenia, unmedicated, and it was perhaps severe FASD or these types of things, then yes, we would refer out to Redfish. But we have taken clients with schizophrenia just with Medicaid. Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
All right, so I have another question for Red Road River. Will pre-treatment beds support OAT stabilization? For anyone who doesn't know what OAT is, it's yeah, thank you. Everyone knows. Good job, you passed the test. No, opioid antagonistic therapy. So will pre-treatment beds support OAT stabilization, or will clients need to be on a stabilized OAT dose? And is there any addiction physician connected?
Yes, we would accept clients on OAT therapy as long as they are stabilized. We do have certain limits on certain OAT medications. For example, with Cadian, we have a limit of the dosage, but that's just to make sure that they are able to participate in the program. But we do take clients in with that are on OAT therapy.
And did that answer your question to the person who submitted that one? Okay.
Is there an addiction, physician connected, or like if they're needing to have adjustments to their insights, knowing that the treatment program is so long?
Yeah, we're definitely working on having that here. So what we currently have is we don't have a doctor on site. We have nurse practitioners that we work with, but out here for this model, we are working towards having a doctor available to us and some medical staff. So we are working towards that, but it still needs to be solidified.
All right, so the next question is for the Ministry of Health. How long is funding in place for? I like this question.
Is this your question?
No, it's not. Someone else was kind enough to ask.
So funding through budget 2023, there was money put aside for this. I know there's been a year of funding allocated, and There is another 2 years of out-years funding that's put aside for this as well, which will be flowing through First Nations Health Authority.
Thank you. Does that answer your question? So we have a good 3-year plan and supported with funding for folks to access treatment for free. Okay, the next question is for Red Road River. How are admissions prioritized or accepted?
So all of the applications go through our intake coordinator. So we've got an admissions team. So everything kind of funnels through there. Pre-screens are done, and then people are accepted into our program, based on the pre-screen and the suitability for the center.
Okay, and the next question is for the Ministry of Health. Is there any funding for other nations for addictions, and if not, why?
I'll answer the best I can. Yes, there will be funding in the future. Right now, currently, I would say that any funding for programs across government right now is very difficult to get. But I caveat that really by saying this is a commitment of government, this is a mandate of our minister to expand access to treatment. So, myself as an assistant deputy minister, I don't have access to a budget that says this goes here, this goes there. Central government and Treasury Board has that say of where the money goes. So my job is to say if there's a community that's in need, and we know there's communities in needs, and what Becky and I would do is look, where's that greatest need right now? It's my job to be able to go to government, get in front of the minister, get in front of cabinet and say, we need money for this community. And that'll be my commitment to all of you. As we're working together, where there's a need for money, I will take that forward. But at the end of the day, right now I just have to say it's tight, and it's in government. There's reviews going on in health authorities and efficiency reviews, as our health authorities partners will know, and there's reviews going on in government to trim the budget, and that impacts programs from cancer to treatment and recovery. So it's just a challenging time, but yes, there is money, there's a commitment to do that, government's made. It's just going to be, we've got to be careful, probably in the short term, and I'll say a year or so, on how much money we have, and like in any government cycle, we hope that changes and we have more money coming, a lot more coming in the future, but that's what I promise to take forward.
So I think there's just some handwritten ones first, and then we'll come to you. If that's okay, Chief Ed?
Follow up.
Okay.
Yep.
You wanna
Go.
come? Here.
I don't need that.
Yes.
White, my question is following up what you were talking about there on the funding shortfalls. My question is around addiction itself and the diseases of addiction and opioids and the crisis that the province has clearly stated that there is a crisis going on. And my concern is we have all the treatment programs available, but we haven't closed the socioeconomic gap within our communities of housing. So have you sat down with potentially the housing and infrastructure minister to discuss closing that socioeconomic gap for First Nations communities and First Nations members that are on the streets, that have no place to go but want to clean themselves up, and they can't go back to the community because there's no housing, no clean water, and so on and so on. It's a socioeconomic gap that started 155 years ago. And we've been displaced from our territory. All of this is an impact to the socioeconomics of First Nations communities. Has that ever been discussed at that government table on how they're going to deal with that socioeconomic gap?
I want to acknowledge that I say I absolutely agree with you. I know I'm having the discussions at the level that I'm able to have. For example, the Deputy Minister of Housing is my former boss. that was in health. I have a very good relationship with her, and as we're struggling to meet the challenges that we're all trying to overcome, housing is that huge component of it, and the gaps across. In general, I think the challenge for me is that I have these conversations, Bethany has these conversations, I push them as a government employee as hard as I can, and I will continue to do so. I can't speak, if I'm being honest, to the conversations that are happening at the minister level, the elected official level. I know they're happening, but I'm not part of those conversations, but I know they're happening. They know it's, understand this is a huge problem. What efforts that they're gonna be taking, that because it's going to cost money, we know that, and where they're willing to go and how fast they're willing to get there. I can't speak to, I'm not at that table, those conversations, but to answer your questions, yeah, I agree with you 100%. And this is something that's well known, and it's a big challenge, and it's a challenge government is looking at, but I don't have the answers for it. I know that we're trying to push where we can, and we're trying to bring the evidence forward and the facts forward that we see from the communities, and try and make the influence that we can make in government to have those things happen. Bethany, I don't know if you have anything more to add.
Maybe I'll just add that just coming out of the First Nations leadership gathering a few weeks ago, those are conversations we heard come up over and over again, and it was really helpful for us when that's raised from community straight to leadership as well. So, but yes, we see that as a real need, and it's so interconnected in people's lives. People are whole people, and housing is a huge part of recovery journeys and their success.
All right, so this goes along with that same question. It's the second part of the question. So what are the funding priorities for 2026 to support further projects regarding addiction recovery?
You want to go? You can start? No, I'll go.
Well, maybe I'll just start by saying the Road to Recovery model and rolling that out through the health authorities is a really significant overarching vision and priority that we have right now, as well as supporting the Indigenous-led treatment and recovery services that are in development and underway. Part of that Road to Recovery model that's such a big priority is, of course, a huge emphasis on access to withdrawal management or detox, but also on implementing longer-term recovery supports and things like the Recovery Community Centers model called the Junction here in BC. So. And Ross can correct me.
She's correct.
All right, did that answer that question for whoever asked it?
I got a little bit more of a question to that. How is the funding allocated? Like, is it on a first come, first serve, or a statistical need, or how does this work? So all the First Nations here in the room can get an idea how to get in line, because we're all in a crisis, right? So it would be good for us to know how the funding is allocated, what we have to do to access it, and is there a line? Is there something we have to meet? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, thank you, and good question. There's contributing factors to that. I would say, again, being honest, a lot of it is exposure to the right person at the right time. So if you're pressing hard and you're with a minister, or you speak to a minister or get that access, just that can trigger those conversations that happen. Is sometimes a trigger for that. Certainly a lot of what it is around need-based analysis government does. So if we're looking, for example, where Road to Recovery is, where we have access or feel we're going to have good access to Road to Recovery, then looking at the neighboring communities across the province that are having to travel long distances, where is that need? So that need-based gaps analysis is very, very important. It all depends, too, on the funding cycle and what sort of funding is available at a certain time. If we're going out seeking interest from communities on it. So I'd say there's a number of different variables. You know, I would say I'd like to see government, when we're dealing with, you know, doing more like the Red Road, that we have a process that's a little more transparent as we're going out and saying, okay, here's some funding. And we do that through through some funding envelopes, we go out there and we advertise that funding and we ask for applications. Other times, honestly, I think in the past, it's been hit and miss. And I think that goes back to my comment at the beginning when I was speaking earlier that I want to be able to do things a bit differently. And one thing I would like to see differently around access to funding is how we actually go out and explore and take applications per se from communities for that. I think government's never going to have enough money that everyone's going to get everything that they want in every community. But I think if we know where those assets are coming from and we're able then to apply that lens of need based on where we already have resources, then we'd be much better off than how we're doing this. But we're starting. I mean, we're really moving down a path now that we know we need to grow. So I think in our services. So I think this is an opportunity for us now. We've made some good steps, but I think if we continue, we'll do a better job of making sure that we have a clear process for communities. Yeah.
Same question?
Yeah, no, it's more of a comment. I'm just thinking, I'm Lori Sellers. I work with Three Corners Health Services Society. So I work with Hatsul, Glechel, and Shotlam Heitlam, and our sister communities is Gedem Puntsaschan. It's just more of a comment. If you're looking at variables like that, I think it's important to at least look at accreditation if those communities and those organizations that you're supporting are involved with the accreditation process where the policies and program delivery is very, very well defined and supported in capacity. Guksham.
Okay, the next question is for Red Road. Can you speak to how to secure a public bed at a Red Road location?
Yeah, so it's the same application process through our admissions team. So our application documents are found on our website, or you can reach out to us by phone and we can have them sent to you. And then it's just filling out an application and selecting the publicly funded option. And then what happens is the same pre-screen takes place, an acceptance to our waiting list happens, along with a letter is generated, and then weekly phone calls to gauge willingness are required, just to keep the place in the waiting list. And that's it.
So this question, the person has been told to fill out the FNHA portal, but then also told there are no beds or no wait list. So it sounds like some mixed messaging, and maybe we need some more clarity and a direct.
Yeah, so we have different funding streams. So we do have some FNHA rapid access beds at our center. So those need to be applied through FNHA directly. There is a link on our website, or you can go right through FNHA. And then our publicly funded beds are separate from that, and they are through the CMHA grant, which can be applied for through our application process, as I mentioned there.
Thanks. And in my own experience in trying to get people in, I've noticed that it might be, if you're talking to the intake person at Red Road, they might have some private beds available right away, and that gets confused for the public beds, which has a wait list. So hopefully that will clarify that there is sometimes confusion on, who's answering the phone, and if they understand that you're asking for a public bed, not a private bed. That's been my own experience.
Yeah, no, that's fair, and that's good information to know. So we'll make sure we address that so it's clear moving forward.
And the next question is for the Ministry of Health. So while transitional housing is important in the recovery journey, what are the efforts of the BC Health Government to put pressure of the housing sector to build more supportive housing projects for people exiting transitional housing?
Sure. Yeah, it is very much on our radar. And we have ongoing conversations right now with our with a network we have of leaders across the health authorities, both clinical and operational leadership, including First Nations Health Authority, to really start to pull together the data and information we have to put a strong case forward that really demonstrates that need. And we know it's an active conversation in the Ministry of Housing as well, really looking at recovery-oriented models of housing and the need for that as well. And there's been a few projects announced that you might have heard about in the news, and we're looking to advocate for more of those.
All right, did that answer the question? Okay. And the next question is for TNG. So this is more of a concern about the protection of clients. And the question is, what are the protection measures to address the, not sure if that,
You want me to read it? I'm not good.
you don't have, it's an acronym GTW, or, and if somebody has written this question, if you could clarify, because it's an acronym that I don't know. Pardon me? Oh, did he? Do you know what he was asking?
Game-type warriors.
What's that?
Game-type warriors.
Game type, oh, games. So this is about divisiveness between nations, I'm guessing? Is that what it's?
No, it's gang related. There's gangs throughout the city.
Okay.
And I'm just concerned about the clientele and the impacts that these gangs may have.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what I hear you asking is, like, what is TNG going to do for protection from gang issues and protection of the folks that are in the centers that are out in the ilhqot'in Nation? So that kind of comes along with the programming, and maybe it's more of a question for Red Road, because TNG, just to clarify to everybody, that TNG we're kind of just like the middleman that's brought, like, the chiefs, like Chief Lennon Solomon has, when the Minister of Health came to announce the funding, she said when she was the Minister of, like, Fisheries and Lands or something, she ended up sitting beside Chief Lennon at a dinner table, and he just talked her ear off about healing and wellness that needs to happen. It wasn't even her portfolio, but she said he just, like, filled her up, that she got excited about it, even though she wasn't even over that ministry. And that advocacy, that's what TNG's involvement is really just the advocacy and the funnel for these funds to come through to help build the capital and provide the lands for the buildings to sit on. And really outside of that, there really isn't, other than the input, like the cultural lens that Red Road is so gracious about, like, leaning towards what is the culture in this area? That's why we wanted all the communities to come to this table and see what you would, like, want to see in the programming, because they're wanting to hear that sort of thing. So, but as far as security and protection, that's probably more of a piece.
I'll just answer, Chief Fred. I think it's a great point, and I think that's something that we have to sort of educate our partners on, about what is happening, with those gangs, and just the historic knowledge of what we have that goes on with those gangs. And so, really great point. I think safety of the people in the treatment centers is utmost important to everyone there involved. And so I think we can do a little bit of education to our partners about what those gangs look like and who's involved in those gangs, and what really has happened in the past, and and some of the deaths that have happened as a result of those gangs. And so just really giving that awareness to our partners when they're doing their selection of the people for their treatments, and being aware of what's happened in the past. So thanks for bringing that up.
Just a bit of a follow-up then. Do you see yourself sitting on that selection committee for participating in that?
For the people going in?
Yeah, for the people that are putting their applications forward to go to the treatment program, would you be sitting on that selection committee, or is what's that panel going to look like? Maybe.
So I think it's Red Road can answer that question, but I think we want to keep an arm's length, as our nation, and we don't want to, sort of pick and choose, the members. I really want it to be a needs-based, and who needs the services most, and we're really trying not to, because we want it available to, all nations and all people who need the service, and that we're really trying to take a step back and not be the decision makers there. But of course, if there was some concerns brought forward to us, then we would be able to step forward and say, this is what we know, maybe about the person or the people, but we would hope not to be on the selection committee as a nation to pick who goes into the treatment. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm going to go straight to Red Road here. And I did have a chat with, sorry, it was Chris. I was going to say Chris. We did have a brief chat back here around the selection process. And my concern was around trauma and loss of the clientele that's going to be going into the treatment program. They're going to require special services. And Lord knows I don't want a sexual predator in my community. So I'm wondering what kind of process when you're selecting these clients, how is that going to work with you in the selection process? I'm not saying deny them access, but how are you going to manage that if they have to see a probationary officer maybe once every 2 weeks, or they have to go through certain mental stressors as they're going through the program? Just curiosity. That's the first question. The second question is around loss, grief, and trauma. Because a lot of clients, they'll go to a treatment program, and as I stated earlier, they go straight back to a system that isn't fit for them. So aftercare is key. So this is probably going to look to the province as well to answer this, because aftercare beds need to be made available. Yeah, treatment programs are great, but if they're going straight back into an abusive relationship, or if they're going straight back into a community that he or she has burned a lot of bridges in that community, it's hard for them to be accepted back into it. So.
Yeah, thank you. For their first question, Red Road Recovery, like our whole network, as we are co-ed and with our policies and procedures and licensing and accreditation, we actually don't take sexual offenders into our program. We refer them out. So that would address that first question. And then the second question, we're huge believers in what comes after treatment is vital. So, part of this model here is going to have that post-treatment second stage program in place to address that very thing. And as far as the grief and trauma and loss, we take that very seriously. So all of our staff, we make sure we hire trained professionals that have all the skills and the certifications and the trauma-informed care and so on. So I hope that answers your question.
Were you wondering about trauma, like as far as people that have trauma that maybe aren't addicted, but they have trauma?
Yeah, the trauma isn't just about the addiction and the opioids and the alcohol. The trauma itself is mental. So I'm curious about that. Like, it's a lot of our people, they don't suffer from opioids or alcohol, but they suffer from trauma that leads them into it. So how do you get to the roots of that problem?
We're going to have onboarded trained counselors that have specialized in trauma. So to address that very thing, because you're right, it's not always about the drugs and the alcohol. It's about the trauma that everything stems from. So it'll come down to our trained team.
I think what Fred's referencing is a psychiatrist, the need for a child and youth or an adult psychiatrist when he's asking questions related to trauma. And yeah, it's interesting that it's sexual offenders. You're not taking sexual offenders. And I personally know someone who ran a halfway house. So I think when you have an offender coming into a halfway house, you have to, you have the documentation in front of you. It's really taking the person. You really need to know the community, and you do need, and knowing the community and knowing our families and community members, that's where the healing starts. And if you know them, I think that makes a huge difference. So yeah, I don't know if you have, maybe if you have a psychiatrist ready through FNHA supports.
That's a really good point. Like at this time, we don't, but you raise a really good point, and perhaps with this model out here, we will take a look at that and see what's available to us to have that.
Did the question of security get answered?
Yeah, I could talk about that. Security, as far as that, we have 24/7 staff, security on site, graveyard shifts, people monitoring security systems, and we also take anonymity very seriously, so we would never share any of our clients' information that they're present at our centers. But yeah, we're staffed 24/7, security on site, security systems, graveyard shifts, so safety is of the utmost importance.
And the next question is kind of open to everyone, I guess. It's not checked off, but I think it's more directed to Red Road. What is the strategy to incorporate ilhqot'in, ilhqot'in, and ilhqot'in teachings, curriculum into programming, example, support staff from other nations?
Yeah, no, and it comes back down to what was said already. That's why we want everybody's input, right? We want to onboard local elders and just respect those local traditions. So we want help in building that cultural portion of our program as we do every time we expand to a new region. So that's where we're going to need your help. Yeah, so like I'd say today is the beginning of that. So our job fair this evening will be kind of the start of the rollout, and then we're going to continue to push forward and host more job fairs, more outreach, and we welcome all of you to get our information, and please reach out with suggestions and anybody that wants to participate in building that with us. We do need help with that, and that's why we're here.
So are you reaching out to the nations, or do we need to reach out?
Both. We will be reaching out, but we encourage you all to reach out to us as well. But we will be reaching out.
So hopefully everybody saw in the email invite to come here that there is a job fair tonight from 4 till 7. And that was specifically, we discussed the fact that some of our community members are not like tech savvy. They don't have resumes written out. They don't know how to go online and apply, so that's why we decided to do this tonight while they're here, so that they can just come and have a conversation and meet them. They don't have to like apply in a formal way. This isn't a colonized system, so that's the great thing about it. So the next question is for Red Road. Does Red Road Recovery take couples?
We do have a couples program for our private pay. It's utilizing our 2 of our centers. So we've got our Red Road Rise in Salmon Arm, and we've got our Red Road Ranch out in Lumbee. 90-day program where the first 30 days, we always recommend that the couple start out separately for the first month, so they have time to work on their individual program. And once they've done that, and their counselors have identified any risk factors, they've identified suitability, commitment to the relationship, and they all agree that it is a good idea to reunite, then we reunite them at our Salmon Arm Center where they can finish their couples program.
Okay, and the next question is about the intake age. Is there a youth component?
Due to our licensing at this time, it's 19 plus, but we understand there's such a huge need for youth, so it is one of our priorities to bring youth treatment. So it's on our to-do list, and it is something that we are committed to doing, but at this time we are 19 plus due to licensing.
And the next question is about income assistance for clients in 2nd and 3rd stages. So I think I kind of know what this question is because I used to work for the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction, and oftentimes when, like for example, when clients go to Le Tuilh, Rensmach, which is in Esk Adam, they get cut off of their income assistance because it's on reserve land. And it's a barrier because they are not allowed to collect income assistance from the band, but that's what the province is demanding they do. So this is something like, remember I was talking about those government workers that get moved to another place or whatever, and you lose that support, and that's what's, what happens is you have somebody, like I used to work really closely with Lori, and we would get, when I was with the ministry, and I would get I would have to escalate all the way up to the, not ombudsman, but basically the top decision maker to get them to do a one of every time we had somebody, and they won't even do that anymore. So all of the people that are from another community, First Nation community, that are collecting income assistance from their band, and they go to, or they're on ministry assistance, like they're living on the streets, living rough, and they go to treatment, and they're healing, and they're getting well, and they go out to Latuil. And Askedum offers like post-treatment recovery. They have 5 beds there, and they have, you know, oftentimes they will have room, but it's a barrier when they're not from the band, they get cut off of income assistance because they're on reserve. So if they're non-Indigenous, which they also accept, they can't collect income assistance. They can't pay their rent out there, which is a minimal like $350 or something like that.
Yeah, thank you. I actually didn't put this one on here, but it is something that I was going to ask. Yeah, so I am the manager of the Recovery Center in Askedum, and it has been a huge barrier. So anyone that is on First Nation land, if they are coming, so we've had people from like Ontario that came to our center, we've had people that come all over the place, and then the moment they get there, they get cut off. And it's that gap, plus then there's also a gap of, as there is a coverage that I think the ministry does, that if they're going to treatment, they can still keep their housing at where they're coming from. And so now this also eliminates their housing. As we all know, that's our basic foundation of someone, you know, in the healing journey. So I'm wondering how you guys are going to work around through that.
So the cool thing is this is not on reserve. None of these lands are on reserve, so they're off reserve lands. Both Deer Creek Ranch at Eunice 18, solar farms, that's not going to affect anybody that's on income assistance through the province. Yeah, and I feel like that's the, you know, the federal and provincial government saying it's your jurisdiction, no, it's yours, no, it's yours, and this is just, and we're losing people in the middle of that, and they're poor, you know, Askedum allows them to stay generally, but they do, you know, they only have to pay $325 a month, and they get fed and room and everything for that, but they lose that funding, so it puts them, Askedum is in a huge, you know, position of having to absorb that extra cost.
I just want to thanks for bringing it up. I mean, that is, you know, Ministry of Social Development, Economic Security, but I'm government, and I'm actually we're trying to find solutions for these people that need treatment and need support. So I might connect with you, Judy, if it's okay, and get a bit more detail around that, and something that I can talk to my colleagues about. I mean, I know sometimes the bureaucracy, it can be difficult to move, but at least I want to raise it. This is going to be a challenge. And anyway, I'm just interested to take that away. So if it's okay, Judy will connect and get some info.
All right, we came to the end of the questions, but has that triggered anybody's mind, what we've been talking about? Is there any unanswered questions? Please feel free to raise your hand.
Can we just stop referring to them as these people? Like the last few weeks, we've heard a lot about these people. So can we not refer to them as these people? That's good. Okay. Well, he just said up there when he was saying to help these people. Like, let's be clear about who we're helping. Let's not generalize First Nations as these people. Like, it's been said a lot the last few weeks, so let's not do that.
I think, yeah, I know what you're saying, June. I think what I heard him saying was the people we're referring to, which are sometimes they're Indigenous and sometimes non-Indigenous, but they're the people that are living rough on the streets is these people. I don't think it's... My understanding was not directed to First Nations in general.
I'm not saying he's doing that. I'm just saying let's just be clear when we're talking about it, who we're talking about.
Fair point.
No, thank you. And I agree with you, so thank you for pointing that out.
Is there any other questions anybody has before we wrap? Okay.
I put my questions in, but I didn't see it. Anyway, for Red Road, for client intake, can a whole family attend, like, for instance, a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter? Can they all attend treatment together?
We haven't done that. We have done a mother and a daughter, as long as the daughter would be 19 plus due to our licensing. it is something that we would consider. For sure, it's like we want to help families. That's what we're all about, is how can we help more people. So as far as the funded beds, I'd have to take a look at the details on what we can do there. But I know for our private pay beds, we have taken on a mother and a daughter before.
Okay. And who's the main contact person?
You can just reach out to us directly. I can leave you one of my cards, and you can reach out to me anytime.
Okay, thank you.
Any plans to change your licensing so that you can accommodate youth and families?
Right now, there isn't any licensing other than, like, we would have to open a youth center, and we are kind of looking at creative ways on like different paths that we could take to, accommodate that. There's, one solution where you could have a treatment center and like a daycare attached to it, and we're pretty creative. So we're looking at different solutions because it's a huge need. Like I got to tell you, I get asked about family treatment and youth almost daily. So we are aware it's a huge need. It's something we're committed to doing. We're just trying to kind of navigate the best path forward.
Just inquiring about your application process, do you have a medical portion involved? One of the barriers that I see is a lot of our folks don't have a GP, and getting that medical portion filled out.
Yeah, no, because we are in the private sector, all we require is disclosure about medical. So that's any diagnosis, any medications that the individual is on, but that's all. And people can self-refer, because we are in the private sector. So that's another benefit of, we're not shackled by additional barriers where they have to go see an addictions counselor for 5-6 visits over a series of months. Like, none of that. They can self-refer.
Okay, sorry. Thanks. That's Chanelia. Tracy Tanis is my name, and I'm from ilhqot'in. Just a couple things. One was about trauma. We have a number of inquiries for trauma, and there's not many through FNHA that just do trauma treatment. So that's always been a request for us, is we have a lot of members that are clean and sober, and they want to get trauma treatment, but they don't want to have to go through the whole drug and alcohol, the process that everyone else does at the same time. So maybe you can speak to that. The other one is there anything to do with the insurance companies, like that would help pay for, let's say if there's a barrier, like a private bed type thing? Is there insurance that covers those kinds of things? I just don't know.
Yeah, so for the first question, we have taken clients in that are primarily there for trauma. We definitely identify those needs during the pre-screen. We want to make sure that we recommend which center would be best suited for their needs. As far as the insurance part, we do work with insurance companies, so that would just come down to the coverage of the individuals. So certain insurance companies do cover private treatment, so that would be one way, but there's other funding streams as well. So I can send all that to you, and anybody else that would like that as well.
Any other questions before we wrap? Everybody is going to be staying around the room for a little bit, so if you had a question that you didn't want to publicly ask, then feel free to come in and ask the questions. Just want to thank our panel for fielding all of these questions, and thank all of you. All of your questions are very meaningful, and we hope you had answers today. If hopefully it'll just roll out organically and it won't be too complicated with very little barriers, and that's the goal. We look forward to being able to work together in the future and getting all of your family members, your loved ones, whoever's going to need to access this recovery model. We welcome and are open to working together and helping our communities get healthier and stronger. So thank you again for coming out today. We really appreciate it. And yes, feel free to pack up some food. There's a ton of food left. Lots of to-go containers if you don't want to cook supper tonight, take it home. Yeah, so Sachin Elia, Cook for everybody coming out today. Thank you so much.